Who's excited to learn? Who's excited to learn how this works? How you can actually get to the point where you're able to raise money and you're not chasing investors, you're not begging for money, you're not worrying about how am I going to fund this deal, right? So if that's you, put it in the chat. I want to hear. I want to hear from you guys, okay? And so also if you've got questions, put those in the chat. When we get to the end, we made some time for Q&A. We want to answer all of your questions to the best of our ability. All right. So my name is Stephen Lee Thomas. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Here's what I want to do. I want to dig in, and what I want to do is I want to show you my capital raising system. It's helped me raise millions of dollars and how you can copy it without having to have experience or a huge track record. Does that sound cool? I'm going to show you that. I promise you guys, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you the exact framework that my team and I use, and you guys can go implement this strategy. Okay, so stick around to the end, and I promise you I will show you a roadmap of exactly what that looks like. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge first, capital raising is one of those areas that I know you can struggle with a lot. I've been there, I've done that. So if you have struggled to raise capital, if you've gotten into a position where you just find that you can't raise capital, it's not your fault, okay? That it's nothing you've done wrong. You might have even told yourself, like, I'm just not cut out for this. It's not true. You can absolutely learn how to do this. And then maybe you told yourself, like, what if I get a deal and I can't raise a dime? Nobody wants to feel that way. So I'm going to help you get unstuck with that, okay? Maybe you told yourself you're doing something wrong. Yeah, chances are you probably are doing something wrong, but the reality of it is you probably don't know what you need to be doing. So it's not your fault. That's what I'm telling you, okay? The other thing that makes it really challenging is the gurus. They make it seem like it's so easy to do this, but they already have credibility and a list, and you're telling yourself, but I don't. Well, you can figure out how to get around that, okay? Here's the other big struggle that I have found, and so many people have shared this with me, is these other mentorship programs and teach you how to like buy these multifamily deals. Is kind of where it ends, is they show you how to underwrite these deals, and they talk about, yeah, you need to raise capital, but they don't really put a lot of effort and emphasis and energy into that. And that makes it really challenging. Okay. So I want to tell you, it's not your fault. Okay. You can learn how to do this. So here are our goals for today. Number one, if you are brand new and you're just learning about how to syndicate, how to raise capital, then you're in the right spot. Okay. Absolutely, you are in the right spot. Some of you might be a little bit more experienced and you've been able to raise a little bit of capital, but you don't have a process. You don't really know what to do. You've really struggled. You're also in the right spot. Okay. I'm going to help both of you out today. What I want to do is I want to show you how to build a capital raising machine. Okay. The exact steps, the exact process, the exact flow of how to raise capital. All right. So, building a capital raising funnel, and I'm going to dig more into this idea of a funnel. Most people don't talk about that, but building a capital raising funnel, the traditional way doesn't work. There's a better way to do it, and I'm going to show you how. Okay. This is if you're trying to do this where you're starting at the top of the funnel and working your way down, if you're just starting this process, it's wrong. Okay. Here is the right way to do it. And this is what I call the upside down marketing funnel. And I'm going to get deep into these details today. But here's what's really important, guys. And I just want you to open yourself up. Just say, all right, if this is actually true, then everything else is going to fall into place. And I'm going to explain this. But if you take this idea of a marketing funnel and you turn it upside down, I'm going to show you why. If you do that, everything's going to get a lot easier. You have to start with what's most important. You have to start with what's actually going to allow you to raise capital. All right. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And then we're going to build on top of that. So real quick, if you've never met me before, my name is Stephen Lee Thomas. I'm a multifamily investor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a podcast host, and I'm a business coach. And I teach people how to get unstuck and figure out how to raise capital very predictably and create a capital raising machine. A little bit more about me. My partners and I, we've done about 16 deals over the last several years. I've been in the space for About 7.5 years now. And so we've invested in about 3,500 units all in all. And if you look at these deals, you can see they're not small, right? So these are not a fourplex, they're not a 10 unit deal, not even a 20 unit deal. These are large deals. And a number of these we've gone full cycle on, and we've provided great returns for our investors. So what's important to understand is, we did this by using other people's money. And we did this by learning how to raise capital. My partners and I, we've been able to raise over $70 million in capital. And I'm going to share those secrets with you today. But I want you to know, first and foremost, for me, it was not always like that. Okay. There was definitely some time where I struggled with my ability to raise capital. My first deal, when I went to raise capital, I fell flat on my face. I only raised capital from one person. It was the things that I had been told, the things that the coaching that I had got in this other multifamily investing program, it was all wrong. Okay. So I want you to know that if you're feeling that way, it's not just you, but if you commit to the journey, you commit to learning how to do this, you can absolutely figure out how to raise capital for your deals. And so, I have spent years and tens of thousands of dollars figuring out how to raise capital. Here's what I learned about raising capital. It's not about fancy website, and it's not about getting thousands of leads. And I'm going to explain that, right? You're thinking, well, Stephen, no, I need more people to invest in deals. Well, at some point, yes, but if your process is broken to start with, then getting more leads does not fix your process. I can promise you that. Okay. You got an echo going. I don't think it's on my side. It might be something you have going on. Is anybody else hearing an echo? Because I should only be logged in once. I saw your message, James. I'm not. Yeah, James, I think it's just you, bud. Yeah, with the echo, you might be logged in a couple times or got some reverb in your room. So, um, anyways, the where I'm going with that is here's what happened is what I had to learn the hard way is that what I had been taught about raising capital was wrong. And I learned that I had to build my capital raising funnel backwards. Okay. Now, listen, for you, my story's not unique. For you, you might be in a little bit different situation, but my guess is probably in a very similar spot to where I was. And you've realized that raising capital is extremely important, but you don't know where to start. There's this universal truth when it comes to multifamily investing or syndication. If you want to get into other types of deals, the biggest limiting factor to your ability to scale and grow is your ability to raise capital. If you can figure out how to raise capital, the deals are going to come to you. You're going to be able to get into as many deals as you want if you can figure out how to raise capital. So you know how important this is. And the other thing is you probably strongly believe in the business, but raising capital still feels very awkward to you, feels very slow and uncertain. Okay. And you want to get away from that. And then here's the other thing that happens is just find a deal. The money's going to follow. Maybe you've been there and you tried that and it didn't work. I was speaking with someone just a little while ago and they said they lost $200,000 in a deal because they put money down and they weren't able to raise capital. You don't want to be in that position. You don't want to lose money. We don't want that to happen to you. So I got to bust some myths really quick before we dive into the secrets I'm going to share with you. Okay. Because I want you to, if you're thinking these things, I want you to stop. Okay. Number one is you need a deal before you raise capital. Absolutely not true. You want to learn how to raise capital before you have a deal. Number two, if a deal is good, the money will follow. No, not true at all. If a deal is good, it does not mean the money's going to follow. If you have not taken the time to build a network and build trust, you're not going to be able to raise capital. Okay. Number three here is you don't need a fancy website. A lot of people think, oh man, if I had the website, if I just had a really good website, people could see me, learn more about me. Then all of a sudden I'd magically be able to raise capital. I can tell you from experience, I spent a lot of money. You had a fancy website built, didn't help me raise a dime. Okay. Now, if you learn how to put everything together, it can help, but the website in and of itself, not going to help you out. Okay. And now here's the other thing. And a lot of people get this wrong. And I'm going to break this down. I'm really going to bust this myth for you. I just need more leads. What is a lead? That's a person who could potentially invest in your deal. And what I want to tell you is if you don't solve, there's a different problem that you probably have. And if you don't solve for that, then all of your efforts are just a waste. Okay. So it's not really about more leads. It's learning how to convert leads, and then everything else starts to fall into place. So, all right. So here's what I'm going to do. Now we're going to dive into the meat of this, how to raise $1 million or more for your next deal. All right. There's three secrets I want to cover with you today. Number one is you don't need more leads. You need a conversion system. Okay. If you have a system, everything gets a whole lot easier for you. Number two is you don't need a track record to start. A lot of people really get hung up there. They have this big, big, big limiting belief that I've got to have this big track record. Well, how did anybody who's successful get started if they didn't have a track record? Okay. So what I'm telling you is it's a big limiting belief that you have, like that you have to have this big portfolio and track record to get started. That's just not true. And number three is don't wait for a deal to raise money. You need to raise money before you have a deal. So what I want to do is I want to break these down for you one by one. So secret number one, you don't need more leads. You need a conversion system. So I'm going to go back to this first deal where I only had one person invest with me. And I had joined this multifamily program and I'd been in there for a couple of years and I'd been collecting business cards. And so I keep this box of business cards on my desk as a reminder to me that what I was doing was wrong. I had been going to these networking events. I'd been collecting these business cards because what I had been told was that I needed to build a database of investors. And if I did that, then I'd be able to raise capital. So I had probably 200 or 300 people in my database, and I literally built an access database. I was not doing any email nurturing, phone calls, or anything like that. And I even had a coach tell me, like, just build this database, like, go out, get these cards, and then when you need to raise money, you'll be able to do it. So got the first deal, had our webinar, sent out a few hundred emails, and guess what happened? That awkward silence that was right there, that's what happened to me. Okay. I got a whole bunch of nothing. I got crickets. I had one person invest in my deal and I was really hard on myself. I even remember telling my partners on that deal, I said, man, I suck at raising capital. And they're like, no, your first deal, it takes it takes a long time. They didn't really tell me what I was doing wrong. They said, no, don't beat yourself up. But here's the thing is, as I wasn't ready to give up, and I ended up hiring a business coach. And so we worked on this for quite a while. And what I learned, here's the important takeaway here is what I learned is that even though I had been building this database, even though I had a few hundred people on my list in this database and getting leads, it didn't help me raise any capital. Right? I had one person invest. What I didn't have was a conversion system. I didn't have a way to take these leads and turn them into investors. Okay. So I'm going to break that down for you. All right. So how many of you are familiar with a marketing funnel? Like have actually, put into place a marketing funnel? Is there anybody on the line who is? You can say yes or no. Like, yes, I'm familiar with a marketing funnel, or no, I've heard the term, but I really don't know. Can I see in the chat? I want a yes or a no from you guys who are on. Yes or no. Shelly says no. Okay, I'm going to explain it to you. Anybody else who has some experience or does not have experience with a marketing funnel? Remember, guys, I need your feedback here. I need people involved. I need help. Okay. The boy, no. Scott, I need one. Joshua, no. Then I'm glad you guys are here, okay? Because this, man, after years of being in the space, after getting multiple coaches, nobody taught this to me. Nobody is like, you know what? You need a marketing funnel. Nobody ever explained it this way. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna break it down for you. Um, the marketing funnel, that's when it comes to capital raising, this is what you're doing. It is a marketing and sales funnel. And you need to focus on all of these pillars. If you don't have all of these pillars, you're not going to be able to raise capital, or it's going to be very challenging. Okay. And when all of these are working together, your ability to raise capital skyrockets. Okay. Um, No, but I have Go High Level, so I have the tools. All right, John, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, okay? Um, so there's three areas that you really, really, really need to focus on if you're going to raise capital. There's a fourth one here, but I'm going to break these down, okay? So the first thing we have to have here in our marketing funnel is we have awareness, then we have interest, and we have conversion. So we call this top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. And then down here, we're called loyalty. And this is where we're getting people to do referrals or invest in another deal. So let me break these down. So you need people to be aware of what you're doing. This is the top of the funnel. Think of this like a billboard. You're driving down the road. There's a billboard for a new restaurant in town. You're like, oh, I didn't even know. I had no idea there was a new restaurant in town, but that's cool. Now I know. So what you need to do is you need to create awareness, right? This is how you're going to get people to know what you're doing and how you can solve their problem. Here's just a few examples. You can do social media posts, you can do webinars, you can have lead magnets. What's important for you to understand is that you need to have something going on to make people aware what you're doing. And then you always got to have a call to action. And a call to action is like moving people to the next step. You're moving them into the next phase of the funnel. So going back to that billboard example, you just see, hey, a new restaurant. Then you see another billboard in town and it says, hey, on Thursdays, kids eat free, something like that, right? Something that's like come into the restaurant, or we've got, dessert half off, something, right? Where they're like, cool, well, I actually want to go inside now. And so now they've moved you down into the funnel. And I like to think of it as like you extend your hand and you pull somebody through, like, hey, would you like to come over and, into the next step? So you're going to be doing, like I said, social media posts, webinars, meetups, something like that. Free download, lead magnets. So you got to get people aware of what you're doing. Then you have the middle of the funnel. This is where now that they're aware of what it is you're doing, raising or helping them invest in multifamily deals or other types of asset classes. Now you've got to provide a lot of education. You've got to get them comfortable with ordering off the menu, so to speak. You've got to warm them up. You've got to say, "Yeah, man, I'd be really interested in this." So now, as a middle of funnel, and this is where you provide additional educational content and some email nurturing. And then your call to action here is to book them onto a call. You're going to say, hey, schedule a call with me. I would love to talk to you more about this. So you're moving them down into the funnel. So you have top of funnel, middle of funnel, then you move them down here. And this is the conversion process. And then you say, now what we're doing is we're focusing on either a soft commitment, or B, getting them to invest in a specific deal. So at this point right here, they become aware of us. They've got a lot of interest in what it is we can help them with, right? We're going to solve a problem for them. And the way I like to think of it is a restaurant. What problem do they solve for you? Hunger. Okay. So what problem are you solving for these potential investors? They have other investment options. How is your investment option better than those other options? How can you solve their hunger? Okay. And then here, maybe you have an apartment investing overview, high level overview. And you say, hey, if I got another deal, would you be interested in investing? Or you have a deal and you say, now I've got a specific deal. Would you like to invest? And you just say, hey, like, here's your call to action, invest in the deal, or give me a commitment here. So if you are not doing top of funnel, middle of funnel, or bottom of funnel, you probably aren't going to be able to raise capital. You need to be doing all three of these, okay? This is your system right here. This is how you create a system here. Now, once you have all of these things and you've got investors in your pipeline, this is the loyalty. This is where you keep them warm. This is where you get referrals. This is where you have a biweekly newsletter, quarterly investor calls, get them in to invest in another deal, and like I said, ask for referrals, okay? So I've got a lot of other trainings out there on YouTube if you want to go deeper into this. I'm not gonna go deep into all of these today. I am gonna shift over into the secrets, but I need you guys to understand this concept of a marketing funnel, okay? Because now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this whole thing upside down on its head. When your funnel is all built, when everything is there in working, you need to drop people into the top of the funnel and then you work them through down into the conversion process. But if you don't have a conversion process, everything breaks. And let me show you exactly what I mean by that, okay? If you have a marketing funnel and you don't have a way to really convert leads at the bottom of that funnel, then all you're doing is it's like having a leaky bucket and you just drop in, you just people come right out the bottom. And that's what I'm saying. If I gave you 1,000 new leads today, Scott, Josh, DuBois, John, Shelly, James, if I gave you 1,000 new leads today, what is your conversion rate? What are you going to do to get them to say yes to either A, giving you a soft commitment, or B, investing in your next deal? If you don't have that bottom of the funnel figured out, then you're just like, throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. Okay. And let me just help you visualize this a little bit different. The reality of it is, at some point it makes sense to get, go out, I need a lot more leads. But where most people really struggle is they don't have that conversion system. And so you can have like this 500 people on your list. That was me. Okay. I mean, it wasn't 500. I had a few hundred people, 300 people on my list, sent out emails, and it was like nothing. Okay. I had one person invest in my deal. What I had to learn to do was build something like the conversion system. I had to actually start at the bottom. I had to figure that piece out, because what I'm telling you is, if you had like 5 warm investors and they wanted to each invest $100,000, that's $500,000 in soft commitments or into your next deal. Do you see the difference there? Like, now that you have an idea of the funnel, if you can figure out the bottom of your funnel and how to like have a good solid conversion system, then it's really not about volume, it's about quality. All right. And so that's what I'm saying here, guys, is I like to think of this: when you're building your funnel, you got to start at the bottom. That's why I like this idea of the upside down marketing funnel. Okay. And figure this out. You've already got 10, 20, 30, 50 people in your existing network. And for those of you that are further along, maybe you've already raised some capital. There's probably more people that you could tap into pretty easily, but you might not have this piece figured out. Okay? If you do, then it's time to move on to the middle and the top. But most people really struggle here. You solve this problem, everything else gets a lot easier. Okay. So what most people aren't doing is they don't know how to, actually book calls. They don't know how to do what's called setting and get people on a scheduled call. They don't know how to even run these one-on-one calls. And I'm telling you, this is sales and marketing. Okay. And you have to learn to get people on a call and have this conversation and get soft commitments before you have a deal. Once you have this figured out, then everything else you do starts really falling into place, and it gets a lot easier. Everything you do gets amplified if you can figure out how to plug the bottom of your funnels, because then you start doing things where, like, now I need to start doing newsletters, webinars, case studies. That's like the middle of your funnel, get people warmed up. And then the top of the funnel, think if you already had a way to just nail this piece right here, have a really good conversion system, and then you figure out how to build a really good nurturing system to warm people up. Then all you got to do is drop people in the top of the funnel, and everything else falls into place. That's what I'm telling you guys. Okay. Is this making sense? Can I get this? Can I get in the chat? Is this helpful for you guys? Is this like, yes, Stephen, this is helpful. What questions do you have? Like, like, give me in the chat. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, cool. Like, good, because I really want to help you guys be successful. And I would years before anybody taught me this, and it's very simple. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand it, you're like, that's it, right? So you just need to learn how to do a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, and everything else gets a lot easier from there. So I want to share really quick. This is Scarlett. She's part of our private community. She does not have, a big track record. She does not have tons of experience. And I got on a call with her, and she said, Stephen, I'm really struggling with all these other pieces. And I don't know how I'm going to raise any capital. And so we chatted it out, and I said, Scarlett, here's all I need you to do. I just need you to focus on this conversation. I just want you to think about like you're plugging the hole in the bottom of your bucket. Okay. All you need to do is figure out how to have this conversation with someone, have a one-on-one conversation with them. Don't worry about all the other stuff that's upstream. Just learn how to have a conversation with somebody, and explain to them how the whole thing works. Like, ask them to sit down and have a conversation, explain everything. Less than 24 hours later, this was so cool. Less than 24 hours later, she posted this in the community. She said, today I raised my first 50,000 for one of my investor friends. There's also the possibility of partnering on future deals. Now, this was like Scarlett's first successful attempt at this. And she has gone in and, shared more of these stories where she's like, I got another one. So she doesn't have a huge track record. She's got one very small deal. I think it's like a 5-unit deal. She's working a full-time job. All she learned how to do is have that conversation. She just learned how to focus on the bottom of the funnel, and now everything else is falling into place for her. So let me just wrap this first secret up really quick. 3 steps to building the bottom of your funnel. Number one, map out your funnel. Think about this, okay? Think about the funnel, but just start at the bottom, okay? Start at the bottom of the funnel. What are you not doing that you can figure out how to start at the bottom? Start with your goal. So soft commitments, then you're going to work backwards to design your trust building steps. And we're going to talk about that next. Number two is create your soft commitment assets. I'm a huge believer in having a conversation with someone before you have a deal and getting a soft commitment. That's a game changer. Why would you not do that? Like, you can just have an overview. Hey, if I had a deal, this is what it would look like. And then say, if it looks like this, would you like to invest? Now, all of a sudden, they've given you a commitment. You keep them warm, and you know how much you could raise before you submit an offer on a deal. Number three here is start with a small list. Okay. You don't need hundreds or thousands of people. Start with a small list, right? You need to just go practice having this conversation. Trust me, 10 people is a very valuable conversation, right? There, 10 people could be the difference between getting into your next deal and not. It's only 10 conversations. That's it. Okay. So let's jump into secret number two. So, secret number two, you don't need a track record to start. You need to build trust. My wife and I, we went to dinner one night with some friends, and this was right after I'd got into my first deal. So I didn't have track record or anything. I didn't even have, like, I don't even think we'd even sent out any distributions. Nothing, right? They just started asking me about the apartment investing. And I thought it was just conversation. Right. So they say, hey, how's the apartment investing? What is it like? How does everything, work? And we ended up talking about almost the entire dinner. And like I said, I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I thought they were just asking questions. Here's what was really interesting. So by the end of that meal, they said, you know what? We want to invest $100,000 in your next deal. And I was like, that's awesome. So what I learned in this is so it wasn't because I had a track record. It wasn't because I was doing this full time. It wasn't because I'd been in it long enough to send out distributions. Um, what happened is we're walking away and they said, here's the reason why we want to invest with you. And it's because we trust you. And I was like, okay, all right. And so what I learned in that moment right there, what I learned is that people aren't investing so much in the deal as they are investing in you, and they're trusting you and your ability to follow through with your promises. They'd never seen a deal. It was they didn't know much about it, but it was their trust in me that gave them the confidence to invest. So I started thinking about it more after that. And I was like, if it's trust that made them feel confident with investing with me, then what I need to do is I need to focus on building trust on purpose. Okay. Because I didn't have a fancy website. I didn't have like this, huge track record or anything. And that's where I started thinking about this idea of a trust bridge. So think of it like this: raising capital, it's like you're this person over here. You have to build trust with your investor. They're standing on the other side of this cliff. Okay. They want to get across. If you do not take the time to build the trust, this is the bridge here. If you do not take the time to build the trust, they're never going to be able to walk across that bridge. It's that simple. Okay. You have to get them to believe and have the confidence that if they take that step, everything's going to be okay. You are the guide for their journey across that bridge. Okay. That is what's really going to make a big difference in raising capital. So now we're moving to like the middle of the funnel, right? So we started at the bottom. We said, let's build a conversion system. Let's figure out how to actually talk to people and get them in a one-on-one call and show them what apartment investing looks like and get them to give us a commitment. Have that figured out with your circle of friends because they already have some level of trust. What you need to do then is also focus on, now how can I really build a lot of trust with these people so they trust me when I have this deal. That there is no question in their mind. They're like calling me and saying, "Hey, when do you have a deal we can invest in?" So I want to share another story with you. This is Janice, also part of our private group, and I absolutely love Janice. And she uh, does amazing things. And what she did is started working with me, and after a couple months, was able to get a deal under contract, partner up with some folks. And a couple months back, they closed on a $10 million deal. She got into it and was able. She had a $500,000 in I think it was last time I talked to her, it was almost 600,000 that she raised for that deal. First deal that she ever raised capital for. Okay, the first deal she ever raised capital for, she raised almost 600,000. Of the group that was there, she told me that there's only one other person that raised more capital than her. And what she did is she focused on that conversion system and building trust. She just followed the process. Now she's working on closing another deal where she's raising another few hundred thousand. So within a matter of months, she's going to be raising close to $1 million and getting into her second deal. She does not have a huge track record. She's just focusing on the steps. She's focusing on the process. Okay. And that's what's been able to make a big difference for her. Um, Also, right, let's do a recap here. 5 steps to build trust with your investors. This is really important. Number one is consistency. Show up when you say you're going to show up. That's huge. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Okay. Step numbers two and three, they belong together. So that's good communication and be clear on how you help people achieve their goals. And number three is education. Help them feel smarter and comfortable with these types of investments. So I need you guys to understand this, right? Like you guys are all in this because you want to change your life. You want to change where you're at. On the other side of this, there's a big potential for you to change your life, to change the life of your family, to change the whole trajectory of where you're at. But you have to put that aside for a moment and you have to focus on the investors. What's in it for them? What problems are you solving for them? How can you solve their problems? How can you change their life? Once you figure that out, and once you truly believe that you have the ability to make a positive impact on somebody else with getting them into a good investment, a stable investment, reduce what they have to pay in taxes, give them that time freedom and financial freedom as a passive investor, and you learn how to communicate that, that's when you build the trust. Okay. Like that's a huge secret right there. Like you have to quit thinking about what's in it for you, and you've got to start thinking about what's in it for other people. That's why people invest, is because you're solving their problems. Solve their problems, help them be comfortable that you can solve their problems, and people will want to invest with you all day long. Okay. And then the other thing you need to do here when it comes to the nurturing is you got to stay top of mind. You don't want to be like bugging people and chasing them, but you got to stay top of mind. And then you got to be real about the risks and the process. Okay. If there are risks, talk about it. One of the mistakes I made when I first started was I said it was all rainbows and unicorns. And people are like, that seems a little too risky. Once I started talking about the risks, then people really started to believe and understand, because they didn't think I was hiding anything about it. Okay. Let's move on to secret number three. This is our last secret. Okay. So, fast forward a year or so from my first deal, I'd slowly been working on building my investor database, gaining these soft commitments, put a lot of things into practice. One of my partners reached out to me and they had a deal, and they said, "Hey, would you like to invest in this deal?" And I was really burnt from my first deal. I didn't know how much capital I'd actually even be able to raise. Um, I like I said, I was burnt. So what happened to me was actually very surprising. And a lot of the people I went back to and said, "Hey, would you like to invest in this deal?" They said, "Yeah." And so why was that the case? That's because I had learned to have a conversation with them and get a soft commitment before I had a deal and raise capital before I had a deal. Um, and once I learned how to do that, then I was like, well, maybe if I'm always raising capital, things will get a lot easier for me. And it did. I learned that if I'm always raising capital, then I'm not scrambling to raise capital. So the best way I can explain this to you is I want you to think about the story of the tortoise and the hare. You guys familiar with that story? Can I get in the chat? Like, yes, I'm familiar with the story of the tortoise and the hare. This is, slow and steady wins the race. You've got the tortoise who just is consistent. And then you've got the hare who is at moments lazy, not focused on getting across the finish line. They're out there doing other things. So what you need to do is you have to realize that if you wait to raise capital until you've got a deal, it's one of the worst things you can do. Um, if you do that, here's what happens. It puts you in panic mode. It makes you look very unprepared. Your pitch is going to sound very rushed, like you need their money right now. And then you'll be in a situation where you don't have very much time left. You're trying to raise all of this capital and you risk losing any money that you put down on the deal. You might lose a lot of money. So if you think about that, you compare that to someone who has taken the time to build trust. They do constant follow up. They've gotten soft commitments and they are slowly and steadily raising capital. Then it becomes a lot easier. Okay. That's when you get to the point where you know how much capital you can raise before you even have a deal. So I want to share about Ricardo, also part of our private group. So, Ricardo, this is so cool. He shared in the group, he said, "Hey, I just sent this LOI to acquire a 42 unit apartment deal. And I'm continuing to add soft commitments." He had $480,000, almost a $500,000 in soft commitments when he submitted the offer on this deal. He knew before he submitted an offer. He's not scrambling. He's not trying to figure out how the heck am I going to raise capital. He already knew. He already built the excitement before he had anybody, before he even submitted an offer on the deal. Who wants to do that? Who wants to be in that position where you're like, yep, I got a $500,000 on deck. Yep, I got $2 million on deck. Who wants to be like that? Like, so like if you could do that, like what would that change for you? Like what would that change? Like how would that be different? What would that change in your life? Now you'd be able to go after deals with a whole lot more confidence. You could close a lot faster. You would probably go after more deals because you'd know how much capital you could raise. So, 3 steps to raise capital before you have a deal, guys. You want to start with investor conversations early. Don't wait. Reach out now. Start planting seeds for future deals. Number 2 is follow up consistently. Use a light touch system. Okay. You don't need to be constantly going after people. It's just you're going to drive more people away. All right. You want to stay top of mind, but not too much pressure. And you want to pre-frame the opportunity. This is something I love to do. I set expectations and I say, look, any deal that I'm going to put in front of you is going to look like this. If it looks like this, would you be interested in investing? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yeah. So if you manage expectations early on, it makes raising capital a whole lot easier. So here's everything you need to raise capital with confidence. 3 secrets we covered today. Number 1 is you don't need more leads. You really need a conversion system because if you just throw more leads at the problem, all you're doing is amplifying your problem. So really focus on cleaning up the bottom of your funnel. Then learn how to focus on the middle, then learn how to focus on the top. Secret number 2 is you don't need a big track record. I promise you. You saw Janice, you saw Ricardo. He's never done a deal before. You saw Scarlett. They're getting this figured out, guys. Okay. You don't need a huge track record to start. You need to learn how to follow the right process. You need to learn how to say the right things. Okay. And number 3 is raise money before you have a deal. If you figure out secret 1 and you figure out secret 2, then secret 3 makes it just a whole lot easier. Okay. So then your question is probably, well, how do I actually implement this? So I told you guys, if you stuck around to the end, I'm going to show you exactly what that framework looks like. Okay. So one of the things I've learned is that capital raising can be very lonely. All right. Very lonely and very hard. But if I could help you raise your first $1 million without experience or a track record, and then show you how to scale it even more, what would that do for you? And the answer is it would change everything. All right. So here's what I want to do is I want to invite you to that private group, to our mastermind. Okay. Our capital raising fast track group. The capital raising fast track group, it's a proven framework. It's going to teach you how to attract investors, build trust, and raise money with confidence, even if you struggled in the past or if you're just getting started. So really quick, who is this a good fit for? If you want to raise capital without needing a big brand, website, or paid ads, fantastic fit for you. If you're part of a multifamily team or you're already part of a multifamily mentorship group, but you're still struggling to raise capital, then this is a group for you guys. It's going to help you out a lot. If you maybe you've had some investor conversations that went nowhere and you don't really know why, we can absolutely solve that problem for you. You saw those examples today. Like you follow the process and it works. If you want a repeatable system to build trust and get soft commitments before your next deal, then this is the group for you. And if you're tired of guessing what to say or how to follow up with potential investors, this group, this process can absolutely help you out. Okay. So here's what I want to do is I want to show you now exactly everything you need to do to make this happen. I told you if you stuck around to the end, I'm going to show you the exact framework that you can use and implement to start raising capital. Okay. Now I know there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to cover every single one of these in detail, but you can take a screenshot of this. You can watch the recording, whatever works for you. But I'm telling you, if you follow these things, you will be able to raise capital. Okay. So here is the things you need to focus on. Like I said, we have the bottom of the funnel, we have nurturing, we have middle of the funnel, we have the top of the funnel. And I'm starting backwards on purpose. But first and foremost, guys, you've got to learn who your avatar is. One of the things that I've learned is that if you try to raise capital for everybody, you're probably going to raise capital from nobody. The more specific you can be with the person that you can help, the better off you're going to be, the better that message is going to resonate with that person. So I'd always start there, like really, really, really define who your customer avatar is. Then you got to learn how to do appointment setting. You've got to figure out how to get phone calls booked. If you're not getting calls booked, if you're not getting people on a call, then your ability to raise capital is hugely stifled. And this is where the sales process comes in. Okay. You've got to learn how to say, hey, would you like to get on a call? Then you've got to learn when you get someone on the call, what do you say? This is exactly what happened with Scarlett. This is exactly what happened with Janice, exactly what happened with Ricardo. We taught them, we showed them exactly how to follow this process. And that's why they were able to get unstuck. Okay. And that's how they were able to start getting these soft commitments and raise capital with confidence. The other thing you need to do is you need to figure out some email automations. You got to figure out some nurturing. So you need to figure out some email automations for new leads. And you need to figure out some email automations for converted leads. These are people who've said they want to, yeah, I'd like to invest in your next deal. You also need to learn how to pitch your deals. There's a specific way you pitch your deals. I've seen some great presentations. I've seen some lousy presentations. We want to help you have some great presentations. Okay. You got to figure that out. Then the other thing you need to focus on is once you've got like this stuff figured out, then it makes sense to really start stacking it on, because if you can figure out how to do this, everything else you do just really amplifies the process. That's where the capital raising machine comes into place. So you're going to want to start doing some type of recurring webinar. I cannot tell you how powerful this is to get people into a pipeline where you're doing some type of a recurring webinar. So there's a webinar framework. What we really like to do is alternatives and apartment investing in general. If you got some case studies, you can do that, but you need to have some type of recurring webinar where you're providing value and education. Then when you get a little more sophisticated, I always love to do what we call a video sales letter. This helps this process become more effective. And then you need to actually create a pitch deck for your soft commitments. And that helps this process be more effective. You don't need it to get started, but these two things really make this process a lot more effective. Then what makes sense from there, is you go into the top of the funnel. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. I really love social media because you can get a really big audience leveraging social media. And there's strategies you can use to where you're not having to post every single day, where you can actually bulk this up. But so you can also do things like meetup groups, networking events, and then the social media, a lot of different ways you can meet people, but you've got to focus on like getting people into the top of the funnel. Social media is important because so many people look there and they will learn more about you. We'll teach you how to do social media management of how to bulk this up and make it really effective. And then what's really valuable is you learn how to create a lead magnet. And once you have a lead magnet, you can put that out there. Then all of a sudden people are raising their hand. You get them into the top of the funnel and you just work them through the middle of the funnel. You get them into the bottom of the funnel. You nurture them along the way. And that is how you create a capital raising machine. Okay. This is what you guys need to do. So you got everything here. If you want, you could just start building this on your own and following this process. But I want to share a little bit more with you. Okay. So I know from experience, because we've done this in the past, to put all these things together, it can become overwhelming quickly. And you can get overwhelmed with all the different pieces of technology it takes to put this together. So, what we've done is we've created a single capital raising system, and we call it RaiseGenius.ai. We're leveraging technology, we're leveraging AI, we're bringing it all together so that you have one system to manage all of this. So if you could just go one place and manage all of these different things instead of having to go get, an individual CRM, you've got to get an email service provider, maybe you want to do texting, appointment setting, you need landing pages for your lead magnets, you got to have a website, social media scheduling. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many different tools that we've used in the past, and it makes it almost impossible to manage. You've got to go hire a bunch of staff, you've got so many different tools and technology. Then you use something like Zapier to bring everything together. It's just a lot. It's a lot to manage, but we've really, really, really simplified that. So we have a platform for you called Raise Genius. Okay, it's everything all in one place. So I can't remember who it was. They said they've got Go High Level. So what we've done is Raise Genius is a white label version of Go High Level. So we've supercharged this. We've fine tuned this Go High Level, calling it Raise Genius, and we're bringing in everything we've got, all of our years of experience, into just creating a capital raising machine. Everything's there to make it possible for you. So here's what I want to do for you guys. If you're interested in seeing if this is a good fit for you, if you're interested in seeing if the capital raising fast track is what you need to get started, the capital raising fast track, and using Raise Genius is going to help you raise millions of dollars, then what I want to do is I just want to offer a call for you guys. Okay. And so this would be a strategy call. Just schedule a call. We're going to do a strategy call. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at where you're at, where you're trying to be, and what some of your challenges are. And if I think you're a good fit, then I'll just show you exactly what the program looks like, how everything works, and how we can get you plugged in really quickly. Okay. And here's the reality, guys. Not everybody's a good fit, and that's okay. And if you're not a good fit, still a great conversation. You're going to learn a whole lot. Okay. And you're going to walk away with some valuable resources. And if you're not a good fit, that's okay. And I'll tell you, because what I want to do is make sure that it's a really good fit for you and that you're going to be successful. So that's what I want to offer for you. So if we can get in the chat, if it's not already there, okay. So we've got the link in the chat. There should be some spots available. There should be some spots available. I've been traveling a little bit. I'm back in the office today. I've got some times next week, and then I'm out of the office again for like another week. So if you see some spots, I would recommend you book it up as quickly as you can. We got a pretty good group on the call today, and I want to solve this problem for you as soon as possible. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can get the Raise Genius platform plugged in for you, join our capital raising fast track program, follow this exact process like I just showed you. You start raising capital like the other people I just showed you, then just book a call. Okay, that's all you got to do. It's a free call, free strategy call, and we're going to help you get unstuck. All right. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to switch over to the Q&A part of this. I've got just a few minutes left. I'll do my best to get to all of your questions. I'm going to look in the chat here and see what we've got for your questions, and then I will get to these questions that we've got listed here. All right. So my question is, I don't come from money. I don't have a group of people around who invest money. Where do I find investors to build trust with? So I believe I answered some of that. And so without getting into too much detail, there's people everywhere that have money. It's really just defining who that right avatar is. You got to think about who that avatar is. And then you start reaching out to them. There's different strategies there. So social media is great. LinkedIn is a fantastic area that we use. We have a very specific avatar that we reach out to. Instagram, Facebook, those are also really good. You just have to learn to communicate exactly to the person that you're trying to help. So instead of saying, hey, I can help anybody, and give them an opportunity to invest in a deal, for me, with my background, I have 12 years before I left my full-time job, I was in healthcare. So I very specifically, I target people who are in healthcare, who are like healthcare providers who are directors, VPs, presidents, or something like that. I get as specific as I can, and I've also taken the time. I understand, like, I know what it is that keeps them up at night. So think about your avatar. What keeps them up at night? And you can create your own meetup group in your area, or you can attend somebody else's meetup group. So meetup is really easy to run your own group, and you just start talking about, the you start talking about the alternative investments. You start talking about how apartments can help them solve their problems. And I've had that be very successful where I just run my own meetup group. I invite people to that. People show up. I just talk to them about the advantages of investing in apartments or alternatives and who's interested. And people are like, yeah, I'm interested. Not everybody, but definitely get people there. So if you don't have anybody in your own network, you just create a new network or you go into a network that exists. Next question I've got here. How do I know how much money you need if you don't have a deal? Um, James, your target's going to be like $500,000, but even if you could do 200 or 300,000 would be a great start. If you're brand new, you need to find someone that you can potentially partner with rather than going after your first deal all alone. I'm not going to lie, you're going to need that anyways from a bank standpoint when it comes to financing. But um, you just need to look at the deals you're underwriting and you need to understand how much capital you need to raise. That's your easiest answer. Look at the deals you're underwriting, look at how much capital you need to raise, and you need to figure that out. If you can't raise the money on your own, you need to find a few partners that you can raise money with. Okay. Next question here. You get commitments first, and you ask the investor how much capital they have to invest. That's true. What I do, Gabe, what I do is I go through my pitch and I say, hey, would you like to invest in a deal one comes up? And then I say, typically we either have a $50,000, $100,000 minimums, and then it can go up from there. So where do you fit? Because if I give them the option to invest in dollar, they'll invest a dollar. So I manage expectations early and often. Okay. Like minimum investment is going to be at least 50,000, some are 75, some are 100. Where do you want to start? Okay. It's kind of like when you go to buy a car, there's already a sticker price. You don't have a whole lot of wiggle room from there. Manage expectations early on. Okay. Next question you have here is when you do your underwriting and figure out your capital stack and how much equity you need for a deal, then you reach back out. Yes. So your idea is you have this pipeline, you get potential investors coming in, you have that conversation, you get a soft commitment, you have an idea like, oh, I could probably raise $500,000. I could probably raise $1 million. Okay. But what you've done is you've given them an overview of if I have a deal, this is what it'll look like. It's always going to look at least this good. Okay. If I have a deal and it looks like this, would you be interested? And they're like, yeah, I would. How much would you like to invest? 50 or 100? I'll do 100. All right, cool. So now you got a deal that you've done all the underwriting. You've got an offer accepted. That's the moment when you go back and you reach back out to them. And you should be doing nurturing this whole time. But now you have an idea of how much you can raise before you submit an offer. And you've already been educating these people and warming them up. Makes it a whole lot easier. James McCann, you don't have to have a deal. You don't have a deal. You have no preference. Cool. Okay. So yeah, James, the thing is that I look to get soft commitments first. And this is where people get really hung up. They're like, I've got to have a deal before I raise capital. No, you don't. What you have to have is a story that says, if I had a deal that looked like this, would you be interested in investing? That allows you to raise capital before you have a deal. All right. Are you looking for a deal right now? Gabe and James, you guys are doing a deal right now. Okay. Du Bois, thank you for the information. Your time is very helpful. All right. Any other questions here? I got just a few minutes, guys. I gotta drop here and run a property call. So I'm gonna jam through some of these really quick. But hey, can we get in the chat again? Can we get that link to book a call? Because I want to make sure people, if it's gonna be helpful for you, I want to make sure they get access to that. I want to see them book a call. I want to help them get unstuck. All right. So I'm gonna go through just a couple more questions here. How do I know if I'm ready to start raising capital? You're ready. If you're here, you're ready to start raising capital. What if I don't have a deal yet? Can I still use the system? Absolutely. That's what it's there for. Will it work if I've never raised money before? Yep, I gave you three examples today of people who never raised money and they started raising capital. How do I build trust if I'm not the lead sponsor or GP? You just have to learn to tell the story. But the biggest thing here is you have to learn to solve a problem for the potential investor. Do I need a website, LLC, or logo before I can start? Nope, you sure don't. I would wait, especially on the LLC, until you're further down the path. What tools or platforms do you recommend for managing investor outreach? Raise Genius, hello. We get that question a lot, but we used to do a lot of different applications. But really, guys, this is the best one. It's got everything all in one place for you. Any other shots here? Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, I am out of time. I appreciate you sticking around to the end, and I hope to get to chat with some of the rest of you soon on this call. If you've got other topics you'd love me to dig into, I would love to hear that from you. Reach out to me or my team. Be active in the school community, and go network with each other and go raise some capital. All right, guys. I will see you on the next call, and have a great week, everyone.